V's Bissau's cousin, like first cousin. I always believed in him. We were supposed to sign V, and Bissau was like, nah, we hip hop. We're not
gonna do the.
He didn't want to sign it. Imagine that he was V's cousin. But I always felt that Botswana was too small for V.
Yeah.
Because he's always been like that. Even from before he got into music, he was just always just bouncing up and down and just very energetic. So I actually linked him up with Goofy.
Welcome to Moving Humanity Forward podcast. My name is Kathy Manijani. You can call me Curious Kath because always there are so many questions and not enough time to get them all answered. Now I want you to know that this episode is so very proudly brought to you by ProLearn, your gateway to professional growth. Now my guest today is somebody who wears quite a number of hats, and in fact having conversations with him before we started this one made me realize just how much deeper he actually was than I was aware of. He's got a bachelor's degree in economics and politics. That to me was an unlikely combination. And this is from Goldsmith College University in London. He's been in different fields. He's been in telecommunications. You might know him as a music as well as an artist. He's been in artist management. He's currently in property development, property management, documentary film production, as well as crypto investment. He's also a co-owner of a crypto exchange website. I mean, when I say the name Stagga Don Dada, you must know who I'm speaking about. But well, let's keep it this way. Ralph Williams III. That's who I have in studio. A very good morning to you and welcome to Moving Humanity Forward.
Thank you, Kathy, for that wonderful... Actually, the entrance that you gave me when I came in the building was great.
It was a plan.
I hope you guys can include a clip of that. That
was so people can see. Just
I was astounded. That's actually a first.
Really?
Yeah, it was a first.
Okay, so you don't normally get the celebrity warmth and welcome.
I don't usually get surprises. That was a good surprise.
Oh,
no, the welcome at the warm. I mean, the welcome's always warm, but like the welcome's always warm. But like, yeah, that was memorable.
I love that. We want you to remember us. And
definitely.
Speaking of, let's start off just with the name. How does Ralph Williams III become Staga? How did the two meld together?
Good question. So Ralph Williams is like my actual name, government. Staga came around maybe Form 3. At the time, Shaba was quite popular. And, partly because of my heritage, my mom is from Botswana, my dad's from Jamaica.
Okay.
And yeah, so my original nickname was Sticks.
Why? Were you skinny?
Hot Sticks. Sipo Hot Sticks. Because my middle name is Sipo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I was skinny as well.
Okay.
And then around that time, it was actually Lusika, Luz Boy, because we were in high school together. He came up with the name Staga. And it was around, like I said, around the times like the early 90s, dancehall was big, it was popular. Yeah.
Okay.
So that came from that.
And you stuck with it? Yeah,
Staga was just a nickname I had ever since.
And then the Don Dada? Were you into like Godfather things?
No.
You saw yourself as the Don?
Okay, that one, there's a Biggie song. It's actually from a Biggie lyric.
Okay.
From the song with 112, Only You, the remix.
Yeah.
Jesus, the note, you know that?
Serious, yeah.
So at the end of it, he says, Stagga Don Dada. But Stagga, the label. So it sounds like Stagga Don Dada. So I used to just say that, and then it just kind of stuck.
Okay.
So that also came from around, let's say, mid-90s. So it was just a nickname.
Okay. Yeah. So, but then it made it and that became your name and you ran with it and you went ahead and released like a song that's still pretty relevant even up to now, really huge hit.
Funnily enough, when we did that album, I did that with Bissau. That wasn't done on a record label. It was just Bissau and I. We just had like an idea. I've mentioned it before on other podcasts. We tried to contact Death Row in the late 90s.
I love that. So you were just like, we are death row material.
Yeah.
Put us
so,
on.
you know, we actually spoke to Suge Knight's wife, and we didn't have time. We didn't have the money to go to LA at the time, but we had the ambition and the plan. So, yeah, when we finally got the because you need money to do everything.
Of course.
So once we had the money,
studio is not cheap. Like,
so once we had the money to do it, then we were like, okay, what are we gonna call it? What am I gonna call myself? And we just said, okay, we'll go with Stagga. And then
wait, so Bisa was what, your manager, your hype man, your backup,
he was
your cheerleader?
Bisa was like he was like
your producer?
I think of
money
it as like a
behind the
Frankenstein project, because it took, even though it was just me, it took a lot of people to put that together. So he was the mastermind who kind of put all the pieces of the jigsaw together.
Okay.
He was the guy who used to say to me, I think you can rap. I never rapped for him.
Yeah.
He just used to say to me, I think you can rap. I think you'd be a good rapper.
Had you seen you rap? Or?
Never.
Okay. So
He'd never seen me rap. He just knew that, like I said, I used to rap along to songs,
yeah,
and change the lyrics. And then he said, one day he just used to say, why didn't I just try and write a rap? And I never really did. But I had like one little verse.
Uh-huh.
So he was probably the first person I rapped in front of. But he was the guy who used to always encourage me to do it.
So you're going to rap for us today?
Nah.
We're going to try and get you to do something else though. But let's talk a little bit about the industry, right?
Yeah.
Because you said mid-90s, okay? And you haven't necessarily been active, but I want to believe that you've had your eye on it and you are definitely keeping your fingers in the pulse to see what is going on as far as the industry is concerned in Botswana. What is your take on where the entertainment industry is?
I mean, mid-90s is where it started, where the interest came from. But like, I think we got into the industry in the early 2000s.
Yes.
And yeah, it was a completely different landscape. There was no digital music. Everything was, CDs, cassettes, vinyl. To get the shots that we got in the video, we needed an actual helicopter. There were no drones.
Yeah.
Everything was more expensive. So the benefit now is that everything is cheaper. It's more accessible. I think there's more. There's definitely more opportunity. There's less quality because there's no quality control. I can make a song on my phone and upload it onto the internet. I can make a song in the morning, upload it tonight without mixing it.
Yeah.
So that's good and it's bad, but like there are definitely pros and cons. But I think in terms of the Botswana industry, it's developing, but not to the place where it should develop, because there's a lot of talent in Botswana, like any other country, but there's no framework. There's no proper legal framework. There's no regulation. There's just so many things that are still missing. So it won't grow without certain things like those.
Give me some of those examples. You're talking about legal frameworks. So we've had a conversation on the podcast and we were speaking to somebody who said, the problem is there is no law that speaks to entertainment in Botswana. And in fact, entertainers are actually sort of guided by the Liquor Act, which is really wild because not all entertainment has to do with liquor. So what are some of those things that you think need to be put into place, and what are some of the ways that we can do that, like with the easiest amount of effort? I
mean, first of all, if many people will probably remember the CJ's commercial that they used to use, Roll With Me, like my first single. Shout out to CJ's. I never got a haircut.
I was about to say, did you get royalties from that?
No, this is what I'm trying to explain. In any other country, they would have got a cease and desist and they would have had to take that down. But in Botswana, it played for years. And no one even thought to call me and say, hey, let's give this guy some free haircuts, or let's talk to him about. So it's things like those. There's no legal framework. So you can't pay people if you look, they've only just started paying artists for music that's been played on radio for more than 20, 30 years. So it just shows you what people are not looking at the entertainment industry as a serious industry,
So what needs to change for that to change?
Well, I've been saying this for quite a long time. I mean, the MySec invited myself and one of my business partners to a film festival in 2019. And we told them, look, if you want to grow the industry, the only way you can grow the industry is you need framework. You need the regulations. You need There are no entertainment lawyers in Botswana.
Yeah.
So for that, even if I did want to speak to the people at CJ's or at BTV about that, who else are going to go to? A contract lawyer, a criminal lawyer? So how do we regulate an industry that doesn't have anybody, able to kind of understand the differences between like a recording contract and a work contract, or you know what I mean? So that's the problem. Like we wouldn't have a football industry or a sports industry or even a construction industry here in the country operating without any type of body or legal framework. So we can't expect there to it's not going to magically just appear from like the musicians. The musicians are artists.
Yeah.
They are focused on the music. They're the creatives. You need business people. There's no even
what's it
now.
going to take for that to happen? I mean, I'm looking at you because you've had 20 plus years in this industry, not necessarily very active in it, but like I said, again, definitely keeping your pulse on it. And you said in 2019 you were invited, you said that, and then what? Like, what do we need to make that happen? We sent
proposals, unfortunately, again, and I don't blame the government. I said this, I was like, when I came about a month ago, I was in the now it's Musa from MySec. And I said, with respect, I don't expect you as the DPS or whichever elected official, I don't expect you to understand the business of making films because you're not in that business. You're a politician. I don't expect you to understand IP or music publishing or songwriting or composing, but you should align yourselves with people that do. The problem is they keep aligning themselves with people that don't know what they're talking about. So this is why. So
as somebody that does know music, you said you've sent proposals, you've tried to have these conversations. What response are you getting? I mean, we look at you and say you're a veteran, you should have, the...
You would think that like when a person with experience and, wisdom comes from experience.
Yeah.
You cannot be wise unless you've got time behind you. You'd think that they would listen to people, not just me, even other people.
Of course.
People who came before me. There are a lot of people who came before me who they could listen to. Schizo.
Definitely.
John Sololwane, who played with Paul Simon on the Graceland tour.
Of course.
Elders who have a wealth of knowledge. But yeah, I think the problem is maybe short-sightedness, lack of vision, and ignorance.
So let's move on to something else and take us through your career, if I can call it that, or the different stints that you've had in media. I just found out today, I wasn't aware that you had been on radio at some point, and you actually used to do a bunch of different features.
Yeah.
So
on Loose Boy Show, Marakaraka Style.
Okay.
We used to do. It just started up. This is before I even had any thought. Remember, I never had any plans.
What did you want to do when you grew up? Like,
I wanted to be, when I was young, I wanted to be an architect. Then I wanted to be a lawyer. Then I wanted to be a politician or a merchant banker.
Okay, so the economics and politics is where that
So by the time I got to university, I was like, okay, I want to be a banker. But I had no aspirations or any intentions of getting involved in music. I wanted to be a DJ.
Okay.
Because I did DJ when I was at university. I used to DJ like first year, second year. This is in England.
What type of music?
Hip hop.
Okay.
I was a DJ. Hip hop head. Yeah, but I didn't battle anyone. I didn't go to freestyle sessions. I didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
I wasn't I wasn't in the lunchroom beatboxing. None of that.
So you basically just surrounded yourself with people that kind of opened doors in a way for you, because Bissau kind of made you rap
100%.
and Loose Boy put you on radio.
Yes.
How did that come about? And what are some of the characters that you would put on?
So with Loose Boy, we had to think of an angle, and the angle was, I don't even know how it started, but like one day I think I was telling a story. And I was saying I was with this guy and he was like, so I did the impersonation. And they were like, oh, that's funny. Like, and then it just turned into a character.
Okay.
And I think one time as well, I phoned in on his show as the character.
Okay.
And he didn't even know who it was.
So that's how it started.
Yeah.
So take me through some of the characters. You had
Babatunde Babangida was the most famous.
Okay.
Dibobza.
Who was Dibobza?
He was just the character that I invented. Just a guy who had a lot of money.
A Nigerian guy?
Yeah, just a rich dude.
Are you going to give us a sample of the Nigerian guy?
Maybe at the end. It's because like, it's hard to go like you have to get
you were
into
showing
character.
me Jim Brown earlier. Was it Jim
I know.
Brown?
Then I had a character called James, but
James.
but Jim Brown was, and there was Jim Brown, there was Babatunde, there was Winston from Kingston.
So you had do you speak Patois?
Yeah, my dad was born in Kingston.
Oh man, you so need to do one of them.
This is the West Indian. This is a cricket top. So it's West. This is like cricket players will understand, but this is what.
So that's why you wore that today. It's like
I'm repping
you're
Jamaica
repping.
today. Yeah.
So then, come on, bring on the.
No, but basically all these characters were just like, so they used to call in, and they used to be part of the show because he had Deep Bana on the show. So sometimes people would think that there was like 5-6 of us in the studio, and it was just me and Loose Boy, and then maybe Deep Sea. So I'd be doing like maybe 3 different characters at the same time.
Did you ever do anything with those characters?
I used to do skits. Shout out to Percy. He used to pay me to do little skits on Yarona. Like he paid me under the table. I can say that now.
Because it's way back then.
No, because he's not there and I'm not there. It's declassified. It's part of the declassified files.
We're going to see what else we can get declassified from this man. Remember, you're still watching MHF Podcast. That's how you find us on Facebook. Otherwise, we are on LinkedIn, we are on TikTok, and we are on YouTube as Moving Humanity Forward Podcast. Be right back.
We live in an ever-changing world, a world where we have disruptions in technology, introductions of things such as artificial intelligence, and we can't help but ignore the need for all of us to level up. Leveling up for your own personal development, for you to thrive in your personal life, and also for organizations to continue growing and become the best versions of themselves. In the pursuit of leveling up, we often leave behind the soft skills and focus on the technical that allow us to do our daily duties. The soft skills help us connect with other individuals at a heightened level, and also to be able to know how we relate with each other to produce optimum results. ProLearn comes in as a partner that centers around leadership development courses, technological courses, financial literacy courses, and also mental wellness in being.
Welcome back. This is Moving Humanity Forward Podcast, and so much to talk about. I did say Curious Kath was the moniker you could stick me with today, because so many questions, probably not enough time. Now, we have touched a little bit already, Staga, on the entertainment industry. You've talked about how we need more regulation, but I just wonder whether we as players within this space are not also just letting a lot of things go and not speaking to them. And I want to give an example where we saw a big organization quite recently coming on board, or rather coming into the space, and a lot of people saying, look, they are just trampling toes, and they have no business in this space. Why are they in a way coming on board and managing this event or doing this or organizing this for themselves? Speak to me a little bit about that. What's your take on it?
I mean, I think with everything, you're going to have pros and cons. There's positives and negatives for everything. Mm-hmm. On the positive side, I think the said organization pulled off a memorable event.
And everybody was talking about it.
Of course, I think so. The objective was achieved. I think in terms of, I personally wouldn't call it a negative, but from some of the murmurs of discontent, let's just say, from people within the industry that felt that they're being Goliathed.
Yes, the pie is not big enough for us to share. Why are you coming and eating? This should have been our pie to eat.
I understand that frustration, but then when you look at it from my perspective as an artist, historically, the people who were in the business of sponsoring events were usually liquor, or drinks companies. It was very rarely anybody else. What used to happen, and this is something that still happens to this day, they would be given a budget. Now the problem is, anybody who gives you money, like, money comes with strings.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. Like, what money or who the money's from. If somebody gives you a lot of money, they're going to want a lot of control, and they're going to want possibly ROI, return on their investment.
Of course.
But they're going to want, certain things to be done in a certain way. And then the problem, I think, that used to happen is that, so what would happen is maybe like a liquor sponsor would give a bunch of money. Somebody would then say, okay, let's try and get an SA act. So immediately overlooking local acts, because they'd be thinking, well, if we've been given this big budget, we need to go big. We need to make a splash. And immediately the whole low self-esteem and self-sabotage would kick in by thinking that nobody local could do that. So they had to look elsewhere. And then what would happen is that the international, quote unquote, international act, usually they're just from across the border, would come and we'd be paid 10, maybe 15 times what the local guys are being paid.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of reasons for that. And to kind of answer the question about the big players coming into the game and trampling on the little guys. Yeah. Some of the little guys used to also gatekeep the money.
Yeah.
And then,
so they're given $1 million pula, and then
they want to do the event for 150.
Oh.
They want to pay. In my time, the Mendoza used to get 50K. He was like the biggest paid artist at the time.
Yeah.
So they would give Mendoza the 50,000. Let's say they get $1 million. They'd want to give Mendoza 50K. Then they'd want to give all of the Botswana artists and DJs maybe 25, maybe 15 between them. Not each.
So everybody's getting 500 pula,
yeah,
1,000
my 1.5. So there was that, and it happens even today where you'll get a South African DJ.
And I'm going to want us to talk a little bit about
who'll
that.
be paid maybe your 200K, and then the local guys who supported him on the bill will be getting sometimes they pay them in bottles of Hennessy. I mean, it's sad.
Let's go back to, so they gatekeep the money, and then the event.
So there's two things that are happening. So basically, people are trying to pull off the event on a shoestring. They'd be given a proper budget, but they now turn it into a shoestring with the intention of trying to pocket the money.
But then wouldn't you said this,
I'm not saying all.
When money is given, you obviously have some sort of SLA, maybe ROI. You obviously have an ROI as well to say this is, but SLA, it has to be a certain level. If I'm giving you $1 million pula, there has to be a certain level.
This is where regulation comes in, because like I was saying, what I used to see, people used to get budgets. They would try and keep as much of the money as they could for themselves, and then put on a show, but not a show. The money that was spent this past weekend, you can see that went into production. So basically, we were not spending a lot of money on big productions. People were looking at how they could just squeeze money from the budget, instead of saying, let's have incentives to sell lots and lots of tickets. Let's have 50,000 people or 20,000 people and make money and then split the pie. They were just saying, hey, someone's giving us a budget. Let's try and keep as much as we can. And then what happens? Nobody gets paid. There are a lot of gigs even today where people perform and they don't get paid anything.
Yeah.
And there are two reasons why that happens. Part of it is because you have promoters that are greedy. You also then have a problem where a lot of artists complain, why is it that you guys pay the South African acts or the acts from outside of Botswana more than the Botswana
And I
acts?
want us to speak to that. Why
so
is that the case?
There's a couple of reasons. One of them is that the Botswana acts do not sell outside of there. If we talk about simple economics, you're not an export commodity. You are just consumed within within the boundaries of the republic. And if you're not getting played in South Africa, you're not going to get bookings in South Africa. So the reason why someone will pick a Casper or a Mapurisa or whoever as opposed to a local guy is it's just simply to do with numbers. It's not personal. It's because these guys are a bigger draw card. Why? Because their music is being played on other. Casper didn't have to come here to get his music to be played here. You know what I mean?
I interviewed Casper.
No, I'm just saying that he did not have to. Foreign artists do not have to come to Botswana for their music to be played here.
Yeah.
Do you understand? Jay-Z's never been here, but they've been playing Jay-Z's music since he's been a recording artist.
Yeah.
You understand? I had to go to South Africa and released in South Africa to get my music.
I was actually going to ask you that. Is that why you ended up getting released in South Africa?
And again, Bissau was the one who had the vision to see that, no, if we try and release here, the same thing as what happened to everybody else will happen to us. So we have to release in South Africa. And that's why when we did release in SA, I started getting bookings in SA. Because remember, there's a lot of competition for bookings. So there's competition within South Africa already.
Yeah.
So if you're coming from outside, you know, it's even harder. So it was actually harder for me coming as an outsider. So I had to come with a product that they deemed worthy to even play.
You were just telling us that, you know, they actually thought you were international.
Yeah. Like a lot of the I remember when I went to Mhlombo and they said, hey, we didn't even know you were from Botswana. We just heard in the song that you did with Goofy the line, Botswana ba Botswana. Then they kind of put two and two together. But initially, remember, there were no pictures. There was no video.
Yeah.
There was just this name. And when they heard the music, they thought, okay, this guy cannot be from SA or Botswana.
Yeah.
So they just assumed that I was from overseas. And that's why they started playing it.
Yeah.
And then they got a shock when I got there, you know.
Well, speaking of the dynamics between South Africa and Botswana, talk to me a little bit about influencers, because you just touched a little bit on the fact that you'll find SA acts, artists, musicians, whatever within the entertainment industry being booked in Botswana and not really vice versa.
Yeah.
So when you look at what's happening in Botswana, what would you say is happening with, do we have influencers in your mind in Botswana?
I know, look, I've ruffled feathers for 20 years, so it's nothing new. Unfortunately, we do not.
We don't have influencers.
We have people.
What do we have?
We have a lot of people who are saying internet thing, but I wouldn't call them influencers. Look, we have people that are popular. We have people that popularize themselves by uploading a lot. But you see, for me to be influential, you can't just have followers. You gotta have pull.
Yeah.
And this is again, it all goes back to economics, supply and demand. You know, yes, we can complain that South African celebrities or influencers, whatever you want to call them, are booked for presenting gigs here. But the question is, you know, a lot of people say, oh, but so-and-so can do a better job. Of course, a local person can do a better job. But is that local person known anywhere outside of Gabs or Botswana? Because if they're not, how do you suppose a person who's very talented at presenting or emceeing is going to get jobs in South Africa unless they're known there? So it's a catch-22. You have to be big enough to get the gig. You see what I'm saying? The reason why we book.
So what are we doing wrong in Botswana? If you're saying you have to be known, and then you're saying there are people so that they can be known. Come on now,
but there's a slight difference. Again, if you look at William is influential.
Yes.
You know, the numbers you can't deny that.
They don't lie.
They're people who are influential are people who kind of move the needle. You can't copy what is existing and think that that's going to be your blueprint. You have to create something new. So you can't just say, hey, Bonang is the leading MC in South Africa. I'm going to try and be like Bonang and mold myself on her or what they have.
Yeah.
And then expect people to buy into that. That's the thing. So I think also it comes from us not celebrating our own people. I think that's a problem that has been prevalent for a long time, where we don't really celebrate our own. I mean, that's why I decided to do the Nijel documentary, because there's no Nijel Amos statue. I didn't see any billboard after he won the it's great that they're doing that for Litsile, because he deserves it.
Yeah.
But Nijel was the first one as well. I think Glody Dube was deserving because Glody qualified.
Yeah.
So he put the country on the world stage. But nobody sings Glody's praises. So I think it's a cultural thing as well, where we're taught to be very humble and not to kind of celebrate ourselves, our brothers and our sisters. And I think
and each other, we have this.
I think that's a problem.
Yeah.
So that's like, Nigerians don't have that problem. Jamaicans definitely don't have that. Remember, Jamaica and Botswana have almost the same population. Jamaica's population is about 400,000 more than Botswana. How come Jamaica is so dominant in terms of music and sports? Jamaicans celebrate Jamaicans. Like, if you're not Jamaican, you know, it's like they're almost it's like a bit like almost like Nigerians. They're very pro Niger.
Yeah. So we're saying we need a little bit of that for our entertainment industry?
I think so, because, you know, you can't keep saying Botswana's got a small population. What is the population of Jamaica?
Yeah.
Reggae music is a dominant form of music in the world.
Yeah.
but from an island of less than 3 million people. So it's got nothing to do with the numbers. It's about you celebrating yourself and celebrating each other and actually bigging yourselves up. That term, big up, comes from Jamaica. To big someone up means to exalt them.
Wow.
You see what I mean? So we do not big each other up or ourselves up enough. That's what I think. But I'm just Staga. I'm just the guy in front of a mic.
Look at him taking himself down after he's just said we must big ourselves up. I want to talk about the economics and politics aspect because you studied this, and this is something that you are interested. Are you still interested in getting into politics?
Oh, for sure. I'd love to.
Want to do that here because you're based in Botswana and also in the UK?
No, I'm actually not based in Botswana.
Oh, so you just visit? You're just visiting?
Yeah, I'm here on holiday.
Okay.
I'm on a
But so, would you want to get into politics in Botswana or in the UK?
I would love to. I think, when I'm in my 50s, I'll definitely give it a shot. I may not. I mean, I've always kind of felt that I would want to do something that would help a lot of people. But
what would your running, what would the vision for it be?
I'm a bit of a radical. So I definitely think that self-reliance and self-sufficiency would be part of it, because I just feel that most of the countries in Africa since the end of colonialism and when they became independent, I think that they're still not self-reliant enough.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
Yeah.
Because that allows puppet presidents, that allows a lot of foreign interference and control. And I think every country that's a republic should be a republic, not just on paper. It shouldn't be a paper republic. It should be a republic in principle and in the reality, because otherwise it's not independence at all,
I'm so interested to know what some of those self-reliance would look like for you, especially in Botswana. What are some of the things that you'd encourage people to do? But we'll touch on that in a bit. And I want you to know that if you want to get heard and if you've been looking for a fresh personal way to reach more people, here is your chance right about now. We're opening up advertising spots on our podcast and would love to help you share your story with our growing community of viewers. Whether you're promoting a business, whether it's an event you're working on, or a service, your message could be what is heard next right about now. It's simple, it's affordable, and it's very, very effective. To find out more or to book your slot, go ahead and call us +267 311 4034 and let's make something great.
We live in an ever-changing world, a world where we have disruptions in technology, introductions of things such as artificial intelligence, and we can't help but ignore the need for all of us to level up. Leveling up for your own personal development, for you to thrive in your personal life, and also for organizations to continue growing and become the best versions of themselves. In the pursuit of leveling up, we often leave behind the soft skills and focus on the technical that allow us to do our daily duties. The soft skills help us connect with other individuals at a heightened level and also to be able to know how we relate with each other to produce optimum results. ProLearn comes in as a partner that centers around leadership development courses, technological courses, financial literacy courses, and also mental wellness and being.
Welcome back. This is Moving Humanity Forward podcast. And you know what? I see Staga practicing some political speak to me, if I can call it that, because I asked you about influencers earlier, and I feel like your answer was very surface. And we know when we spoke of air, you went a bit deeper. So go deeper, okay? And and speak to me about, now you said you don't think we have influencers, Botswana. You said we have people that are just posting a lot of stuff, and if you're not known, then you're not really going to.
Please, influencers, don't make TikToks about me. I know they're
coming.
I know they're going to be
it's
pissed.
Coming.
No, I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. Everything that I say is to kind of highlight what I feel we could improve.
Okay.
And sometimes you need straight talk.
Maybe let me get you just to what is an influencer in your mind? Because earlier you said somebody who has the numbers, like the number or the pool, the numbers don't.
Okay, so I think a lot of us confuse having a lot of followers and being popular with being influential.
Oh, so they're not the same? Because in Botswana, a lot of the time it's like, oh, how many followers does
I have
this
more
person
followers
have?
than you.
Yeah.
I am more no. I believe that, for example, you could have 100,000 followers, and another person could have only 10,000. But it's not how many followers you have, it's who follows you. So it's the quality of the people who follow you.
Yeah.
Do verified accounts, not the new ones, but like, are people who actually have power and influence following what you're doing. Because I don't think you could call, you see, a lot of the people that we call influencers are actually promo people, promo boys and promo girls. So they're promoting certain things, lifestyle, maybe promoting people to drink or promoting certain types of behavior.
Yeah.
That's not an influencer. An influencer is a person who sells product. So I think you have to differentiate as well. Again, not to diss, but I don't think we could count. You see, I think because a lot of the entertainment industry, I mean, even the fact that we're still regulated by the Liquor Act, liquor and entertainment are they go hand in hand.
In Botswana.
I think worldwide, but especially in Botswana. So the problem now, we see people who are what I would call promo boys or promo girls, getting people to go to different events where there's a lot of alcohol drunk. Yes, I think they get people to behave in a certain way, but would you call that an influencer? I wouldn't. So an influencer is a person who, I'll give you an example. When Soulja Boy did, I think it was his second music video, Steve Jobs went to the set and he did a deal with him on the set to put the first, I think it was iPhone in his video. That's an influencer. Because he understood, the people at Apple understood that this 16-year-old kid who had this big hit has the attention of the youth.
Yeah.
He's not selling alcohol. He's actually selling technology. That's what an influencer is supposed to do. You're supposed to sell product. So I think unless you've got companies coming to you where you're actually selling product, no, you're just a promo person. And that's not a diss, because you can get paid quite handsomely for promoting different things. But to me, no. I don't think that I would call a person who's promoting behavior or lifestyle an influencer. I think if you're selling an actual product where people actually, or maybe if it's a person that people want to look like or be like, that's more of an influencer.
But then would that come through in our culture? I mean, we spoke about this earlier, to say our culture in Botswana, we have this put me down, Setswana tele and Lifufa, where even if you're doing really well, and if I didn't have that, I'd probably be like, I want to be like him. Instead, I'm like, I want to replace him.
So that's
right?
the problem.
So would that come across given our culture?
I mean, I think it would, because look, you still have people that can sell products, but I think also kind of like when we were talking about we mentioned something earlier about self-reliance.
Yes.
And
we are going to get to that, to say, what do you think it would look like and what would you sell politically?
So again, a lot of these people are my friends. I don't want to offend too many people, but look, you can't put your face on a product and then claim that that's your product. I'm speaking in parables here.
Okay.
But like, I think if
It'd be
you're
nice
gonna,
if you could take away, stop being
look, if you're gonna,
Jesus
if you're gonna really inspire people to do better, you have to, like, for example, there are a lot of people who have brands.
Yes.
Okay. Let's say maybe a clothing brand.
Okay.
And they call themselves maybe designers or clothing brand owners.
Yes.
Now, if I'm buying t-shirts from China and I'm putting my logo on that t-shirt,
you know which name we're thinking
No,
about.
I'm not thinking of a particular name.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just giving you an example. I'm not talking about today. Oh, I see where you guys are. No, I'm talking about back in my era.
Okay.
There's a lot of people who, what they would do, they would come up with very nice logos and they would put them on t-shirts that they've imported. This is before we even got to China. These t-shirts would sometimes be bought locally or maybe from SA.
Yeah.
That's not a clothing brand. That's branding. That's corporate branding. You can't put your logo on somebody else's thing and then call it your own brand. That's not your own brand. So, you know, Lesotho has a textile industry. Lesotho's not that far. We should be able to be buying, you know, material. I mean, I'm sure there are enough people who can actually sew and artisans who can actually create a label. To me, if you're creating a label, you have to make everything within the country. You can't just import a finished t-shirt.
Made product.
That's not a clothing brand. So to me, self-reliance would be, let's actually truly start to make things. So it's about manufacturing and not just taking products that already exist, whether they're in SA or in China, and then rebranding them.
But I want to ask you this because we spoke earlier about it, and I want to move to the political aspect to say, what would be the ticket that, you know, tried to sell to the nation on? But we have this, I don't know if I want to call it mediocrity that we celebrate in our nation. I want to know how you would make that go away. What are some of the things that you would put on the table to say, vote for me because A, B, C, D, E? What are those?
I haven't really thought about what my campaign strategy would be, but I just personally feel in general that, like I mentioned earlier, I like Ibrahim Traore, and I like him because what he's done, he's uplifted the people of Burkina Faso in a very short period of time. You know, he's for example, Burkina Faso is one of the largest producers of mangoes on the continent. They also produce a lot of tomatoes. You know, instead of exporting all of the tomatoes to some other country to then give you back a brand in a can that you can't afford to buy, he's actually, you know, created employment in the country. You know, he's I think it's they just opened a tomato canning factory, but just things like those, because for too long, whether it's Ghanaian cocoa. Why is the Hershey company worth 17 billion a year, and the whole Ghanaian cocoa industry is not worth 17 billion? Why do we call it Belgian chocolate if it comes from Ghana? Shouldn't it be called Ghanaian chocolate? Yeah. Why is it Swiss chocolate when there's no?
So how would you apply that into Botswana? I mean, if you look at our GDP and some of the top sectors really, or the contributors, mining, and we know there are issues around our diamonds. Though that said, there are other minerals and metals that we haven't really fully explored. So maybe you're thinking that. And then you look at tourism. That's another one where I wonder how you would repackage that or what you'd do different. And then also entertainment. I think those are the top three.
Let me not speak about tourism. I don't want to get killed. But I don't want to talk about diamonds or tourism because, yeah.
You need to, you know what, I'm going to give you an assignment to work on that, because you can't just say, I want to talk about it.
I'll tell you why. Because, you know, for example, okay, let's just talk about the tourist industry in this country. Okay. Who owns most of the lodges in the Delta? It's actually
mostly local.
No, in the Delta.
If okay, I don't know about in the Delta, but if you look at the numbers,
I'm not talking about the lodges here near Khabane or Mo'udi. I'm talking about lodges that people pay $5,000 a night.
Yeah, most of them are joint ventures or foreign owned.
Let's be honest.
I mean, I don't have the figures in front of me.
Okay, let me ask you this question. Do you think that, for example, Disneyland... And
remember, you're not asking
No, I'm asking you a question. Yeah. Do you think Disneyland is owned by foreigners in America? Do you think the foreigners control...
No.
So there's your answer.
So what your question, you would posit to make everything locally owned?
No, because then you guys are gonna think that I'm coming on a.
Yeah. So how would you go? Okay, so you need to think. Let me give you homework to think about that, so that when you're pitching yourself as a candidate politically.
Let me just say this. If you're gonna be a republic, you should be a republic in principle and in reality, not just on paper.
Yeah.
So you should be self-governing, self-sustaining, self-reliant. Yeah. That's the idea.
Yeah.
In an ideal world. We don't live in an ideal world. Yeah. But one thing that we cannot and look, these are difficult conversations. You know, I've had them in my music, like I told you.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that actually, because I want to know if you
I've had them a lot with people, but remember, when you change the status quo, someone's gonna be upset. You know,
of course, you're nothing further. Change is never fun.
No, things are not the way they are by default. They're by design. You know, it's not an accident. that all of these things are not in the hands of the people who are most affected by not gaining from them. You know what I mean? And I think part of it is because of history. Part of it is because, and again, another thing, like we spoke about this off camera as well. We were saying about the whole film industry. And I said, look at how many people the government has sponsored. I think the government has done a great job with education in this country, you know, from the beginning. But then if you look at how many people have been sponsored to get into film production, where's the industry that these people are going to get jobs in?
Yeah.
And again, like I said, I don't expect the government to understand the business of film because they're not in the film business. So,
but what do you expect government to do? Because if they're sponsoring
they have to
people
align
and they're
with
putting all
themselves.
that money in there, but then they have policymakers who don't really even understand.
But that's the problem. So you have to align yourself with people who do.
Okay.
And that will take time.
Yeah.
And you see, this is another
And
problem.
how much time are we talking?
So the problem is, it's not going to happen if we're still dealing with politicians that are thinking about 5-year terms.
Yeah.
Because most of these things take a lot longer than 5 years. Like to kind of quote unquote fix the entertainment industry, it's not going to take 5 years.
What do you think the best
will
way
take-
to fix?
So wait, it will take maybe 10, 15 years. So that means it can't be, hey, opposition, ruling party. You see, that bipartisan politics thing, it's a problem when it comes to developing countries. It works in developed countries, but it's a big problem in developing countries because you now have to change the complete direction. So that means that when I take over from you and I'm from a different party, it's almost like we're enemies, but we're not because remember, we're supposed to be citizens or representatives of the same country. So yes, we may have different ideologies, but in terms of progress, we should be trying to aim for the same thing.
Yeah, but if you look at something like what happens in Botswana is we have a national development plan.
I know.
Shouldn't we put something like that together for the entertainment industry, and then we know that we're going this route regardless of who's in power? Wouldn't that work? Something like that?
I think maybe just even just, you know, you got to remember, like, again, I like Troy because he said being a politician is not a business opportunity. It's service to your nation. You remember like when we used to have TS?
Yeah. I went for TS.
Exactly. The generation that came from TSM before, maybe they understood that a bit better. But I think now a lot of people go into politics, especially whether it's business, you know, we talked about it with the entertainment section.
Yeah.
People do not go into entertainment to say, hey, let me put on the best event. They think, well, let me go and get money from this bank or that mine or this drinks liquor company. And then that's the only way that they see of getting money. You see what I mean? So I think people are going into some of these industries
So how
things
do
for the wrong
you
reasons.
make the public aware of that, and what can they do? Because
Education.
okay. And we spoke about education as well, because and we have this question come up each time just before elections to say who's responsible for politically educating the nation, because if whoever's in power enjoys the status quo, why should they change it? And then you say opposition, do they have the budget? Whose responsibility is it to educate people? And even what you're talking about, who are we expecting to educate people, and how do they know this is the truth or not?
See, then it then goes back to leadership, and you need selfless leaders everywhere.
So you're going to be a selfless leader?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, they say that power corrupts absolutely, as they say. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I believe that. I don't think anybody sets out to be corrupt. But I think that once you've had a taste of the good life, it can be...
What are some of the balances and checks that you think we should be putting in place, especially in Botswana?
Look, I just think it all goes back to... A lot of it is down to the individual. You know, it's like you need to pick the right people. And I think a lot of the time, people are picked to be used. I think that, like, and that's just with politics around the world. Like, there are a lot of puppets in politics. I don't think that I think a lot of the first presidents of many of the countries that got independence were deliberately picked because they were not going to advance the interests of the people. They were going to advance the interests of the former colonial power. And I think that's a problem. It's still a problem today. So I think that kind of incompetence has trickled down into even... You get a lot of people who, again, I don't really want to name names, but there are ministers that you can tell this person should not be the minister. They should not be in charge of anything.
Why?
A tuck shop,
What
let
do they
alone a
do?
ministry.
What do they do that makes you say that?
I just think some of the people are picked for the wrong reasons. I think it's all political and it's not about what is really going to advance the country. That's just this is me speaking as Ralph, not as Staga. Just personally, I just believe that. I believe that a lot of the people are put in power because they can be used, and they will further the agendas of the people who are really in control. That's what I believe.
So if you were put in power, you wouldn't further those agendas? Do you have the financial muscle to stand alone? Because I think we look at the US and say Donald Trump managed to do what he did because he had some, financial...
I think he had a lot of things that went in his favor. He had been a celebrity in America. He was obviously known.
That would apply to you,
he's not the first billionaire to run for office. Ross Perot ran in the 90s, I think late 80s, early 90s, but he lost. And he lost a lot of money. And so I don't think it's just the case of having the money to be... Again, it goes back to influence. And how influential actually are you? Do people listen to you?
Well, speaking of people listening to you, you actually, because I was asking you, if you're interested in politics, which I wasn't aware of, why are you not going the route of, I believe it's Ugandan Bobby Wine? I mean, why
I like him as well.
Why are you not putting it into music?
Politics is a dangerous game. It's not for the faint-hearted. Politics is difficult because politics is it's about money. It's about power. Power, greed, all those kind of words come into the conversation. It's not, and you know what, to be honest with you, I don't envy the commander-in-chief of any country. I don't think that's a job that I've personally met a couple of the presidents of this great nation, known a couple of them personally, and I think it's a difficult job. I don't think it's easy. It's very easy to criticize people from from here, from the armchair position or whatever. Running a family is hard. Running a country is very, very difficult. So I don't think I would. To be honest with you, I don't aspire to be like president of anything. But I think there are many ways that you can serve your country without getting into politics. So I would like to do stuff like that.
Well, I think we've run out of time, and I want you to just, there's a line from a song that you were talking to me about. I'd like you to just close off sharing that and then just explaining. And it almost feels like you were very visionary. I think it's a song that's about 20 years old, and yet you're saying things that are still happening now. Yeah.
There is a line from a song that I had on my EP, Staggalicious EP. The song's called Be Black. And the opening line is, Europeans in spaceships return to Mars while Africans are going apeshit for German cars. And basically the verse talks about what I've just been talking about now, like who's in control of the resources? What are we spending our money on? What are we being influenced to buy? We spoke about the media, we spoke about a couple of other things. I mean, look, part of the reason, like I said to you, that I feel that we don't celebrate ourselves is the reason why I even got into making the documentary about Nijel.
Yeah.
Because I feel that, he has to be, I mean, it's not going to be somebody else that's going to do, like no one is going to come from outside of Botswana
to come and celebrate
and tell the story of a Botswana. Because that's not how it works in America or in England or in China. When you see something about one of their people that influences us, it's, whether it's a musician or an athlete or anybody, it's usually made by the people in that country.
Yeah.
Because you have to put your own people on a pedestal.
Yeah.
Not to put anyone else down, but it's very important to uplift yourselves and each other.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why I wanted to do it. I had never made a documentary before. I didn't have the money. I didn't really know how I was going to do it either. And that wasn't even the first documentary I wanted to make. The first one I wanted to do was the Dan Chanda story, simply because I just felt that anybody who could do what he did in the 1980s
deserve to be celebrated.
Yeah, and I asked him, I said to him, how did you do that? Like when I finally got to meet him, I said, how did you in the 1980s have that kind of vision to say? And then he started telling me, he said, look, I never went to school. I didn't go to music school. I didn't go to business school. Everything I learned. And he started telling me about his life story. And I said, yeah, I think a documentary.
So are you making a
movie.
documentary? How
Yeah.
far with that one? How far with
No,
Nijel
Dantanda
Amos?
started. Nijel Amos is almost done.
When can we expect it? Where will we see it?
Well, he's on suspension. He's going to come off suspension next month. We're going to put the
When you
documentary
say
out
next
just
month,
before
do you mean May?
May. Yeah.
Okay.
And then it's going to come out just before he returns. His first competitive race is in July.
Okay.
So it's going to come out just before that. And
Are you going to release it here?
yes,
Okay.
we have to. Come on, he's
No,
from,
that's
he's
what
a
I'm
homeboy.
saying. That's
so,
what I'm saying. Yeah.
we have to take it to Marobella as well,
I like
where he's
that.
from. So yeah, we're gonna, like I said, he wasn't the first though. So like even with Dan Chanda, the reason why I wanted to tell his story was because of when he did it. Because he did it during the 80s when,
Apartheid was still a thing.
yes, when you were not allowed as a black person to have certain things. So he had a vision and he was determined. He didn't have the money, he didn't have the education, he just had the will. So it's a testament to the power of willpower.
Yeah.
Like if you, and I do believe that like you don't, like when I was saying to you earlier, we didn't know how we were going to do the music thing. We didn't really have a plan, but we knew where we wanted to go to. And if you really, really believe strongly, and not just believe, like you can't just, when they say push, pray until something happens, nothing's going to happen apart from,
Your knees are
sore
gonna
knees.
get hurt.
you can't just pray. You need to combine it with action. So yes, you need to believe it, but you need to actually put some physical effort into it. Then the path opens itself up, and then people just come to you. That's exactly what happened with us.
Yeah.
Like people literally just started coming because we were determined, and we said, okay, this is the path that we're going to go down. So it's the same with, like I said, even with the documentaries. I'd never made a documentary ever. And Dan Chanda actually said to me, he said, why did you want to do this? I said, I don't know. I just feel your story has to be told. He said, my whole life I've wanted somebody to come and say that they want to make a documentary on me, but nobody has.
Wow.
So because you're the first, I'm actually going to give the project to you. So that's how it happened. And then unfortunately he died a year after I met him. But then I met his wife, who I'm doing. So basically Sylvia Chanda, who's the head of the foundation,
The Dan Chanda Foundation.
So it's like a collaboration with her. And then she's been very helpful, giving us access to the music. And I actually met Dan Chanda before people started sampling him.
Wow.
So it was crazy that, then, Waffles sampled him, Master KG sampled him. And, he's a legendary figure. I mean, Goofy, who co-produced my first album, he told me, he said he used to walk from Yeovil to downtown studios where Dan Chanda and Penny were. And he used to sit outside with a keyboard.
Wow.
And it wasn't even plugged in, and he'd just be there on the keyboard. And he said one day he came up to me and said, what are you doing out here
Wow.
with a keyboard? And he said, Dan Chanda was the one who called him into the studio. I said, come in, let's see what you can do. And he said, yeah, play in the church. He said that was the first time he saw pizza as well.
Wow.
So the engineer ordered a pizza, said, Stagga, I'd never seen a pizza in my life. So that's his Dan Chanda story.
Yeah.
So he was very, now influential, that's an influential guy.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people used his blueprint,
Okay, we've run out of time. I wanted to actually ask, do you have people that can tell that story about you? Have you influenced anyone,
that's a
opened a
good
door
question.
for someone?
Oh yeah, I've opened doors for people.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely have. V's Bissau's cousin, like first cousin.
Mm-hmm.
I always believed in him. We were supposed to sign V, and Bissau was like, nah, we hip hop. We're not
We're not
doing
going to
that.
do the
He didn't want to
Kosa
sign it.
Kwete
Imagine that
thing.
he was V's cousin. But I always thought that Botswana was too small for V.
Yeah.
Because he's always been like that. Even from before he got into music, he was just always just bouncing up and down and
Yeah.
just very energetic. So I actually linked him up with Goofy.
Okay.
So when he did the Njame album,
Yes.
that was my
I
link.
remember that was where I was at Mudhut at the time.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
And even his Universal album, because the guy who signed him was the guy who produced half of my album, Sipo Dlamini. He
Okay.
signed.
So you opened those, like you connected them.
Yeah, he signed. What's his name? Nasty C and Diamond Platts.
Yeah.
But Sipo was my manager. He also produced half of my album. Who else? AKA was in a group called Entity.
Mm-hmm.
So Entity was produced by a guy called Caesar Mpofu Walsh. He's now a political analyst. Caesar's brother Yeah, it's my friend. They're you know Dalim Pofu, the advocate.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're Dali's sons. They gave me their demo before AKA was called AKA, and obviously my album Staggalicious, we basically licensed that to Creative Kingdom. So they didn't sign me as an artist. We licensed to Sony basically. So Creative Kingdom was the label that I was on, but I wasn't actually officially signed to it. But we licensed. Like I was signed to it not as an artist, but we licensed. Yeah. So that's where AKA started his career.
Okay.
In I think 2006.
Well, speaking of careers, I mean, you're into cryptocurrency, and I know I'm out of time, so I'll probably just get you to give a link somewhere. You're into cryptocurrency as well. I mentioned the fact that you are a co-owner of a website that's
CoinerSwap, yeah.
CoinerSwap. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about property because, you know, that Staggalicious EP was kind of all that I know. Did you ever do more music?
I did.
Okay.
But I didn't release it. And I did a lot of features.
Should I ask why?
Yeah, I mean, I did a lot of features in SA for like features with Mendoza, with TK.
Are you gonna release those songs? Please release.
No, they're out there.
Okay, so share them.
Like,
let's give you some airtime.
But like the crypto thing was just because, you know, I've always been into finance, and I kind of felt that this is about maybe just before the pandemic. I was trying to figure out, you know, I'd heard a lot about Bitcoin. I used to think Bitcoin was just for criminals and for people who use the dark web. So I avoided it deliberately. But then I got into trading, like futures, in 2016. So I was trading for, you can look them up, a place called Devinto Academy there in London, just near the Bank of England. Trained by a really good guy called Antoine Vassal, great. And then that was around the time when Bitcoin was starting to become a bit more popular.
Yeah.
So I decided to find out. And yeah, I just think that, look, the world reserve currency is not going to be the dollar for very much longer. We can see the dollar collapsing in real time, partly because of the Trump tariffs and partly just because of other reasons. But I don't think that the next world currency will be fiat, meaning it's not going to be paper money. We're already in what they call the cashless society.
Yeah.
There are many places that only take card payments. So the future of money has to be digital. You know, it's not going to be another, it's not going to be the pound. It's not going to be any other fiat currency. It has to be a digital one. So that's when I started to look into initially Bitcoin. And then eventually I got into the first, I'm not a trader, as in I don't sit in front of the computer and trade all day. I have traded before, but I am more of an investor. So I bought XRP when it was like maybe 10 cents a coin or below 20 cents. It's now about maybe $2.50. So you can do the maths on that.
Yeah.
If you buy like a lot of it. So I'm more of an investor who I buy and I hold. I'm not like there trying to. And no, I don't sell Bitcoin. Everybody was asking me when I used to post on Facebook like, Staga, I don't want to accept Bitcoin. Like, no. But I think you should educate yourself about cryptocurrency just because of the direction that the world is going.
What's the website?
My website is basically, it's an exchange. It's called CoinerSwap.
Of different cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, so if you want to exchange Bitcoin to Ethereum or Bitcoin to XRP, you can. We will direct you to where you can, get the best rates. But we also have a group called Coinesseurs. If you follow me on Twitter, the links are all in my bio. So for people who don't know anything about cryptocurrency, it's just basically education. What is cryptocurrency? How can it help you? That type of thing.
Okay, let's close off. You promised me that you were going to sample one of the many characters, can I call them that, that you used to have. I am waiting. So yeah, who are you going to do for me?
I'm not in character.
Come on now, what do we need to do to get you in character?
Which character did I used to do?
Give us some Baba Gid. Give us. I don't know him. Like I got to sample. Was it Jim Brown?
Okay, so Baba Tunde, what did I used to do? I used to have like you know how it used to work?
Tell me.
So even when I was at Duma, there was a thing that I had called The Streets. I used to do that on Duma FM.
Okay.
And I pretend that I was like a foreigner who just landed at the airport.
Okay.
And I'd be like, direct me to where you are. and nobody in Botswana knows the street names. So they'd all be, this tuck shop, be like, I've only just got here. I don't know what you're talking about. Give me a street name, and it would be hilarious because the amount of people.
Please do the accent. Let me hear the accent. I can hear you British, like I heard that earlier. Let me hear the Nigerian one.
Nah, look. You'll put me on the spot.
I gave you the whole podcast.
No, you are putting me on the spot.
I gave you the whole podcast.
But you get the gist of what I'm saying.
I want to hear it.
You get the gist. Okay.
But
you put me on the spot today.
I'm going to be trying to get him to do this. But yeah, this has been another episode of MHF Podcast on Facebook, Moving Humanity Forward Podcast on LinkedIn, YouTube, as well as TikTok. My name is Kathy Manajani. It's been an absolute blast. I hope to see you next time.